Hey everyone, welcome to Working Lunch, Recruitment Working Lunch for some of you, Working Lunch for others. Super happy to have you here. And before I introduce my superstar guest for this week, as we always do, let us know in the chat channel what you're having for lunch today. Personally for me, I've already had lunch. So mulligatawny soup with crackers delivered. Rohan, eaten yet? Or are you a kind of late lunch type of guy?
Delaying it today. Salmon and egg noodles, I think, on the menu.
Cool. Well, people are dropping their luncheon into the chat channel. I'll just tee up today. So the kind of working title for this chat, this conversation is talent attraction, acquisition, and management. Now, to be fair, some people could accuse us of maybe saying that's quite high level, and what do we mean by that? But we're definitely going to get into that. We're 100% get into that. And the title is, to a degree, it's I think intentionally broad, because some of the stuff we're going to get into is super interesting for recruiters and kind of TA folks. But before all of that, everybody knows who I am, so I don't need to introduce myself. That'd just be boring. Rohan, I would like you to introduce yourself. And as I put on the LinkedIn post earlier today, you are quite probably one of the nicest people or person people will meet in the TA HR recruitment ecosystem. So what do you do?
Yes, thank you. So I do partnerships. I'm head of partnerships for Adway. We're a recruitment marketing company. Just super brief, kind of, I guess, whippet summary background of my career. Hybrid. I've been in startups, I've been in fintech, we scaled up, I led on recruitment there. I've been in corporates as well. I've actually done L&D, I've done recruitment, and I've done talent management. So it's kind of, I guess, why I went, yes, you can accuse us of agreeing for a super high Everest kind of title, but that's basically my mindset. I come from, actually have done the recruitment, done the L&D development piece through to talent management, how do you map and further develop the talent, basically, the best people in the business. So yeah, I love the talent piece. Kind of, I'm a HR geek, self-confessed, but I love this space.
Wicked, man, wicked. And as I said, we've known each other for probably a number of years now. We've been on the same event speaking bills. You've been on my podcast. I mean, look, super cool to have you here as a guest. And just to tee this up for everybody, I think just in terms of the reason for, I guess, wanting to get Rohan on and just kind of maybe give a bit of focus to the conversation itself. Adway, the company you currently work for, produced a really cool piece of content, which piqued my interest immediately, because I think it's around recruitment and social media. Well, it is around recruitment and social media, but actually it was giving some really quality statistics, which I think are a little bit, there's so much like statistics out there around social media, but this was so specific to kind of recruitment and HR. I think it drew me in. So just to give everybody a little high level. So in this particular piece of content, you mentioned 71% of businesses recruit for more specialized roles now than they did 5 years ago, which I thought was really interesting in the context of the transition to new roles and the types of new roles that are coming out. Secondly, which I thought was quite a nice contrast, 20% of recruiters report that of their current vacancies, 20% of those roles they are unfamiliar with, which I thought was really mind-blowing, which shows where continuous learning development is going to be needed, and tooling. And the one that really hit kind of my personal interest and sweet spot, 68% of millennials and Gen Zs visit employers' social media pages. So if you've got no social media presence, or you've got a very vanilla social media presence, you're losing out on the talent, your future leaders. So it was those three pieces that really drew me in. And I wanted to kind of just delve into that a little bit more, because you and the team are really, delivering and generating a lot of really interesting stats and content. And I wanted to sort of delve into, the sort of things that you're discovering, the sort of things that we need to be aware of as recruiters and TA folks when it comes to social media. Because I think a lot of recruiters may fall into that category of, an ATS auto generates a social media post for me. Click one button, out it goes. That should do the job. So that's kind of framing the conversation. But over to you, Ryan. Where do you want to start? I know you had a specific question for the audience.
I think given all that big amount of information, I think I'll throw one more stat in before I throw a question to everyone just to think about. But there's 4 billion people on social media. That's 90% of the internet users there. So that's crazy. It's a huge market. And then when I think about the attraction piece, and this is the question to everyone here, do you know your conversion rates from your advertisements?
Personally, I wouldn't be able to reel those stats off immediately. I think maybe some of the ATS systems and that I use with different clients may be able to give me a high level review, but I don't know how accurate that would be. It'd be great if everybody kind of contributed in the chat channel to sort of say yes or no. Do you know your current kind of conversion rates? What's your general finding when you pose that question to your clients, Ryan?
Yeah. Well, first it's a clarification question. People go, what do you mean by conversion rates? So by that, I actually mean people who apply. So who have you been targeting? Yes, there's loads of questions in there. How are you targeting them and all of that? But it's actually you've targeted people and they've actually applied. What we've found from kind of our research, even with clients, people tend to sit around this 2.5% to 5% conversion rate. So that's traffic from an advert coming through to a career site, and then actually you're missing 98% potential worth of users, of top talent who you've put all that effort and time into. You're actually losing that because actually only 2.5% basically are being converted. The good ones step up around the 8-10% mark.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, like we're all paying a huge amount. It's mad, isn't it?
Mega low.
Yeah.
Certainly if you're thinking about cost versus return on investment, right? So get a 2% return on that investment and spend, nobody's going to be happy, least of all the CFO.
100%. And Glenn, you've heard me say this before. Like, I know I've done it when I did recruitment. I've treated everything in the ATS as the 100% worth of truth that was coming through. I just didn't realize that I probably, when I was doing recruitment, was actually losing a lot of talent coming through from ads that I was posting on. Maybe it could have been on LinkedIn predominantly. There's actually a huge area to do it in Instagram and Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. You can do a lot there as well. But you treat the ATS and all the data in there as 100% worth of truth.
Louise raises a point there around Broadbean, because I've used that before as a kind of SaaS platform. It is, I guess, technically. Do you get a lot of companies kind of using Broadbean as well? And they're like, no, don't worry. We've got an ATS, but we also got Broadbean. Do you have a general view on the kind of accuracy and, kind of popularity, reliability of these types of platforms? Yeah,
Broadbean is massive. Smart Recruiters are massive, who partner up with Vonk as well. Funny enough, actually, we partner up with Smart Recruiters because I guess with kind of your Broadbeans, your job adders, all of those, your job listing, your multi-posters, they do it on your aggregators and your job boards predominantly.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if someone said actually they do on social media. If they do on social media, the targeting, is there an algorithm running behind that that's actually then finding you the right people? So the social media space is something that's been missed massively.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. Do you think that perhaps there is a danger that because obviously, do you think there's a catch-all sort of thing? When people say social media, they kind of almost to a degree include job adverts and job boards as well within that? Do you think there's perhaps a bit of a kind of catch-all term there? They're just like, yeah, we've got stuff across social media without intentionally thinking about actual social channels and actual engagement across those social channels. I mean, give us an insight into those kind of introductory conversations you have with customers sometimes around, types of questions and sort of things that they tend to sort of, bring up and that you discuss.
Yeah, it's a good point. A lot of people we find when we talk to them, they go social media, LinkedIn or Twitter. And that is not predominantly what we're talking about. We're talking about a lot of talent being on Instagram and Facebook and other sites there as well. So yeah, we try to broaden kind of the knowledge that there's other channels. If you're talking using buzzwords like the omni channels and all that, the route to more talent. Yeah, you can be using a lot more kind of channels to actually target obviously talent.
Do you think there's a particular, do you think that there's a mindset around it. Or actually, LinkedIn and Twitter are probably more corporate, and Instagram and Facebook are more social. Do you still think there's that business mindset that, we probably won't find the people we're looking for on kind of Facebook or Instagram, so therefore we'll stick to the more tried and tested channels?
Yeah, 100%. But I think the tried and tested channels, the market's kind of saturated when it comes to recruitment. Recruiters looking there, whereas it's not on the other side of the pond, as it were. So, and then I guess the corporate side of using social is normally just to give updates on your company on your corporate page as well. That's how it's normally used, just to post about sustainability, all some really good stuff. But it's actually not used, but the job slots, job wrapping, and all that kind of LinkedIn. The other channels are not being used, when actually we're finding that, like, I think it's around 70% of women are actually on Instagram. You find actually job categories are actually on Instagram and Facebook. So I think a stat we all know, it's not a stat, but knowledge that we all know when it comes to tech hiring, the tech developers and engineers aren't on LinkedIn. I know all of us who've done hiring, talk to our tech teams, we know that they hate being approached on LinkedIn. They're probably not even on LinkedIn. So it's kind of like, actually, where do you find these guys? Yes, you can go on Stack Overflow, Reddit, loads of other sites, but actually social, they're on there as well, actually. So then they're really fruitful, cheaper channels to be using.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Debbie just mentions there she's had some great success with Facebook, and she said just really from boosting posts. Do you think that there's a high degree of receptiveness on something like Facebook? Do people look at Facebook, and because it's a blend of perhaps personal and or professional, they're more receptive to some of the things that come into their feed, as opposed to on LinkedIn? People might just be a little bit more like, oh, that's just junk. I just want to look at the stuff that is really relevant to my job day to day. I'm not even filtering in job adverts or kind of contact. But in your kind of Facebook world or Instagram world, you might be more inclined to engage. Do you see any sort of kind of trends along those two lines?
Not particular trends, but we have the knowledge Adway that there's this short window where social is not saturated. It is informal. The whole world's becoming informal. COVID's kind of fast tracked that as well. So people are going to actually be scrolling through their newsfeed, and something will pop up, and you're more psychologically inclined to actually engage with it, especially if you're kind of just passively going through. Whereas LinkedIn, you're just going to go through very, very quickly. It's kind of like us as recruiters, we take time, whatever it is, 9 seconds to look at a CV or whatever the stat is there. But on kind of social channels, I think it's a lot more informal, and that actually breeds a good kind of receptive behavior as well.
So, kind of how do you sort of start with and or advise kind of recruitment TA HR functions around, okay, let's flip from traditional channels to non-perhaps traditional channels that you haven't used before, and how do you flip from just sending out and just push to try and actually get some engagement? There are particular kind of levers or activities or actions that you advise them to take?
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. A lot of companies and people are doing the EVP branding piece. That's the number one piece, which all starts with. That's whether you're going to attract people or not. If you're not doing it, it's probably something you need to do, because that's what differentiates yourself, especially on digital, because that's where we all are at the moment predominantly. So how did you differentiate yourself? Something we've learned from all the influencers like Tim Sackett and everyone we've been talking to, as well as the Gartner research. That's where a lot of all of our stuff's coming from. People like you, Glenn, who we've been talking to, learning. It's that the branding piece is absolutely crucial. People will turn away a business if the brand isn't right for them now. I think a crazy stat, which I think I learned from one of the influencers recently, he said 80% of the funnel is actually influenced by the first 20%. So if your brand and the EVP and you're not kind of attracting those kind of, let's say, segments, audience segments you really, really want, then actually the rest of your funnel is going to be actually potentially dire to actually who you really, really wanted it. You're not going to be getting it.
Okay, cool. Well, listen, just in the chat channel here, I mean, Peter's made a point, which is, he said, look, I'm no expert, but remember someone who is saying it's all about finding out where the right people hang out, which is true, right? I mean, it's about kind of discovering where the kind of social groups are, where these networks and communities are. You were talking there about perhaps businesses. If we flip it into the context of maybe somebody like Debbie, who's an independent kind of business, a business of one, how is there a different approach, or is it still about brand, or can they go for a bit more of a kind of personalized approach? What would your suggestion be?
Not going to give obviously a perfect answer here, but I think it's a bit of trial and test. I think it is partly about the brand. You're still going to post out there, but you're going to have to look at your data, kind of what your rates, what are your impressions.
Yeah.
And the key thing which we do and our tech does for us, it will shift off to different channels. And so if you're a kind of independent person, I would kind of trial A/B test your ads, basically LinkedIn, put it on some other channels, if it's Twitter, whatever it is, A/B test them based on your data. And I'd push potentially the same ad out onto 2 different channels and then see which one's performing. And then for your kind of biggest bang for your buck, move one off the other and then push it onto another. So that's the manual workaround.
That sounds good. So certainly if Debbie's, kind of boosting Facebook ads, maybe get, a couple different sort of templates in there and in the mix to sort of see how that's working. Because I mean, I know Debbie, and obviously she has a very clear brand. So that could be an interesting piece of advice for her, that's for sure. So, I mean, if we move it into the kind of, I guess, the channel specific space, if we were talking, because like Louise mentions here, I'd love to be using Instagram more. And I think if I roll back up, actually Shafiq's mentioned, he was like, look, I look for senior salespeople, so I'm not really using Instagram. Are there particular types of roles and communities you would advise for Instagram, or do you think it should and could be for any type of kind of recruitment and kind of talent attraction?
We don't have the exact data, so I'm not going to sit here and lie and fluff about it, but we can tell that our communities, especially like the Hispanic, kind of your Black communities, your female communities, they are on those channels. We're learning at the moment. That's why I'm kind of saying trial and test it, because there evidently is little developers on LinkedIn. I've been told by a HR colleague recently, a lot of HR people are on Instagram because of the HR profession tends to be populated by females. So then you can kind of piece these kind of
links in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and is some of the challenge to really understand the kind of breadth of the kind of communities on kind of Instagram, the fact that kind of data mining on these kind of platforms is quite challenging above and beyond what they're prepared to allow you to utilize and access. So it's kind of almost like, there's this kind of, everybody's learning as we progress and as perhaps, more data becomes available. Is that a fair comment? Yeah,
and that's what we're doing at the moment. We're just lucky that, I'm lucky, our clients are lucky, we're all round lucky as TA professionals that the tech is progressing so fast, that AI is learning, and there'll be studies that we'll be able to put out soon, and other companies going, actually, here's where the audiences live. Next will be how do you actually connect with those audiences and what tech do you use and all of that. So yeah, that's cool. Well, Debbie just mentioned there, she's like, she had a corporate page deactivated because she posted a link to her website. So it does, I mean, I think that does interestingly lend itself to, I think we've all experienced the changes to the kind of LinkedIn algorithm and how, kind of posts get kind of boosted and how certain, kind of content gets, I don't know, a little bit more bottlenecked, as it were, what they seem to be more appealing. And certainly things like, that, like where certain social channels are being more regulated, as it were. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of that, like you say, it's that trial and error, but you've got to really learn about that platform to understand what's going to work. It's not enough just to be on it and pushing, right? You've got to be collating that data on the back end to really sort of start to see what's working and what's not, and where your messaging is resonating and content's resonating. And I think on that kind of report that we mentioned, the employer brand presence, I think there's some stats on there. It says something along the lines of passive candidates make up 70% of the job market. And that is obviously the core reason why organizations use it for kind of recruitment. So I think you were referring to perhaps Facebook there. But then it goes to kind of review other sites that also are utilized, like YouTube that we haven't mentioned yet, Pinterest, Snapchat,
You mentioned TikTok. Are you starting to see an increase in the usage of those for this type of kind of talent attraction? Because I wouldn't have thought of YouTube personally.
Yeah, me neither. We are starting to see slow, really slow pick up. Probably because we tend to work with enterprise clients. So I guess everyone should focus your head that a lot of my knowledge is coming from the enterprise sector. I'm not talking necessarily startups, scale-ups. Predominantly, a lot of our data comes from corporates. But yeah, we are starting to see pick up of it slowly. Corporates obviously can be a bit kind of, I will say, slow moving because I've been there. So we are starting to see TikTok, Snapchat being used more and more because they attract your Gen Zs, your millennials. That's where they're living. That's why you're obviously doing that. It's all about then the mobile journey, which is something we haven't touched on, but how mobile friendly is your kind of application journey? How friendly is it once you land on the page? I've seen horrific ones. We've all seen horrific ones. That turns up from straight away. When I mentioned conversion rates at the beginning, that's where you've just lost someone straight away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a super interesting point. Let's flip straight onto that because I think mobile is definitely super important. And if you've only got a website that's optimized for mobile and not really optimized, to your point, it can be the beginning of the end of any engagement with certainly Gen Zs and some millennials. So, I mean, first and foremost, let's maybe slightly amusing. Tell us some of the sort of things that companies get wrong when it comes to mobile. What don't they do? What are they not intentional about when they think about kind of mobile?
I think that really sometimes you see people who haven't optimized even just for your mobile phone in terms of how it looks. It doesn't even fit on the mobile screen. So the click button, the call to actions, it does be muddled sometimes. The other thing is you're just clicking through loads of screens. That's the other one. And also we see a lot of this, attach your CV. People don't have a CV on their mobile normally stored. Of course you can store in your mobile, but it's a bit of a faff trying to access it. So that's something we see a lot. And it's kind of like, well, we're all on a mobile the whole time. Like we can all see kind of how much touch time we spent, but it's how do you get that talent? And we often advise actually get in a LinkedIn, upload your LinkedIn, upload something from your kind of Google account. That's the quick workarounds. That's the way to actually capture them. And then if you haven't got everything you wanted, then you can go back out and get more of it. But actually capture them, don't lose them. So you can have the conversation and you can start to get them bought in. So this is the funny one, probably to see a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine, well, certainly when companies started to sort of think about mobile, I remember, some sites you'd go on, it'd load, and then you'd have to kind of scroll across to see the full web page. And then you're there trying to tap the drop down, and it's just not happening. So how can companies really launch a stellar mobile game? You just kind of gave an indication there, like if nothing else, engage them, make it easy for the individual to connect with you and register interest. One tap, connect with something, some details to follow that conversation on. What else are you kind of advising companies to think about and do?
Yeah, it might even just be, dare I say, just get their email address.
Yeah.
Get them to register their email address, go back out to them.
Yeah.
It's just about keeping it super simple. You've kind of touched on already. Don't get them to click through loads of screens, and don't get them to go through long click box kind of exercises as well. Just don't do it. Keep it simple, because I'm sure us as recruiters, we wouldn't even want to be doing that ourselves. So why would we want an applicant to do that?
Yeah. And if, if companies are a little bit kind of, mobile perhaps, is for a specific generational talent, and that's not really, the kind of the target market for us. Would you kind of challenge them on that? Because let's be fair, I mean, I'm, mid 40s, right? I'm all about mobile. So, I'm certainly not in the millennial or Gen Z category. So there are, quite a lot of, should we say, anywhere between kind of 30 and kind of 55 individuals that are, fully mobile. So are you finding you're having to challenge some of the preconceptions that companies have, perhaps?
Not really.
Cool.
I think there's a lot of data out there that says obviously millennials are all there, but I think it goes unsaid basically. but no one's going, actually, I don't use my mobile and I'm a 55-year-old. Because like you said, I think a lot of people are on their phones. And I think the key thing is, as soon as you've gone mobile friendly, another byproduct of that is that you've actually given attention. You've given attention to your career site, basically, and your ads. That's the key part that comes with it. You probably have to really, really optimize it, not just the look and feel, but you're starting to think about that click-through journey and all of that.
So on that point, click-through journey, what's the optimum? What's the optimum amount of clicks to get through? I mean, is it quite literally one click and then somebody gets a response from the recruitment team, or is there because I can't imagine that if somebody just registered their email, they would get an immediate response from a recruitment team. They might get an automated response, but I don't think they get a personalized piece of engagement. So kind of where's the balance on that? What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's a good question. We tend to see we want 3-5 kind of clicks through, because I guess you can have a success factors career journey, 12 screens and loads of clicks within those screens, basically. Or you can have an optimized kind of one screen, few things to do, kind of your name, your surname, your contact details, and upload your LinkedIn. Boom. That's done. And then you've got, actually, the recruiter's got plenty of information to come off, contact details. Actually, I can see your CV through your LinkedIn as well. So the email one tends to be when you really want a specific hire. That's just actually a way we've just approached that, because the specific data scientists of the world or kind of full stack developers are super competitive. And sometimes the right applicants, if you attracted them through the right ad, then you don't want to lose them. So you might as well capture them really quickly. So it might just be, so that's why we do it that way, because it's just an easy win, basically.
Yeah, that's cool. So coming back to the title of today's show, kind of attraction, acquisition, and management. I think we've kind of touched upon the reasons for and why attraction is key. Certainly, given 4 billion plus people on kind of social media, that's a big enough reason right away, right? And there's clearly diminishing returns on LinkedIn, because I think one of the stats you guys throw out, like 95% of the companies that you surveyed were using LinkedIn Recruiter for finding talent. So if that doesn't tell everybody that LinkedIn is becoming massively saturated, I don't know how much more you can kind of illustrate that, right? So this is where kind of social channels, being creative, becomes a lot more important, and you have to have a plan about it, and a real plan. So what are there any, well, let's throw it open to you. Are there any other kind of tips around attraction that you would provide, or the attraction acquisition piece? Because I'd be keen to come on to the management piece, because oftentimes people think of management as, right, they're in the process now, so that is somebody being managed. So before we hit that, I was just curious as to any other tips, thoughts on the kind of attraction acquisition piece that you wanted to throw out.
No, the thing it's the simple things. It's the right ad to the right person through the right channels, and then optimizing that conversion, so that through journey. If you look at all of those, I don't see how you can really go wrong, because that's the hard piece. And you need data behind all of that. Hard piece.
Yeah, and to your point, not just data off of perhaps the ATS, not just data off of like the native reporting. You've got to start to compile your own data dashboard, so you can really start to manipulate that data as well, and start to sort of see different insights. Because again, as we mentioned, right, the native reports on those platforms are only data that particular platform is prepared to give you.
Totally. Yeah. So use your social media stats. They are good stats, just the impressions, the clicks, the reach, all of that. And then use your Google Analytics as well on your career site. Look at all of that. There are tools out there, so you can link the full journey as well. So you can paint a pretty good picture just to social and the Google on the side of things.
Yeah, and it starts, like you say, it starts to paint that illustrate that picture. Before we go into the kind of management piece, do you find that do you experience kind of TA, HR, kind of recruitment folks that are just like a bit data phobic. They're just like, oh, I don't really want to get into that. It's that's not really something I'm comfortable with. Do you experience that?
Yeah, I'd say that. Someone will shoot me, but I think recruiters are kind of get-goers. You just want to get on with it. You kind of, your requisitions, let's get on, start filling it. Maybe it's historically because that's how kind of agencies have worked, but it's kind of like we need to get on with it. We need to get done for the hiring manager. That means we don't want to take a step back and go, actually, let me look at a whole load of data for a few days, which will potentially help us. So I'm like that as well. Still, I do partnerships now. But I know sometimes we don't want to take a few steps back and then actually look at the data piece, like really, really look at it. I don't mean look at it for an hour. I mean, properly look at it, do some thematic analysis, talk to some people, bring them into a meeting going, actually, what do you think? Let's improve that. Let's get some action logs going with some actions, timescales. That's like properly looking at, which will improve stuff a lot more. So yeah, answer is I don't think people really do it. Maybe they are data phobic. I would go and say that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, well, hence why I guess this has given rise to the kind of recruitment operations manager role, as it were, kind of like, somebody that manages the data on behalf of the team. But I guess, the kind of message is you don't have to get deep into the data, just kind of start to be interested in it, curious, start to sort of perhaps just explore what it's telling you, because, every outreach that you're kind of creating, every campaign you're creating, you want it to do well. You want it to kind of engage that audience. It's intended for. And if you're not really looking at whether it's been successful or not, you only really have a very subjective view on whether your energy and your efforts are actually delivering on a kind of return on investment for you, right?
Totally. And I think look at data with people. Because if you don't enjoy it, just kind of, I was going to say suck it up with some other people, but someone else might really enjoy it and they'll see kind of things you don't see. That's what I do in areas I don't enjoy, because I'm not good at data fully. I know I've got other strengths, but I'll look at it with other people and then I'm good at the action piece. So use your strengths, basically, but bring it together. Do take some time to look at it, definitely.
Yeah. Does that come into the kind of management piece of what we're going to talk about, just in terms of how you manage your time, your efforts? Because I think in an ever expanding kind of world of social media, it sounds a really kind of quite average thing to say, given the fact that we're in it. We've been in it for years. But I think because there's an increase in, well, I've certainly noticed there's an increase in content from TA, recruitment, HR. You don't want to just be part of that kind of noise, right? You want to stand out and, offer content, be engaging, and that links into the kind of EVP piece, right? You kind of you want to create content that resonates with people on a kind of personal and professional level, because let's be fair, they may be looking for a new job, but if they don't like the purpose or mission of your company, they ain't gonna work for you. Unless you or if they misinterpret what your kind of mission and values are, then they're not gonna engage. So I think it's important to be very intentional around the content you're creating and not just be satisfied with just, that ATS push, the easy social content, and not be and certainly not be afraid to try new social channels and allocate time to that. So to Shafiq's point, his perception, he may well have tried and tested this already, that, salespeople are not on Instagram, but if he hasn't, perhaps spending a percentage of time to investigate that might be worthwhile. It might not. I mean, he may turn around and, come back and be like, well, actually, there's definitely no salespeople on there, but at least you've explored it, right?
Totally. Yeah, that's the whole thing. That's why the data's key. You need to see what's happening there, because I think a lot of the time, getting the conversion rate question, do you know it or do you not? And if you don't know it, it's the same. You probably could ask a few questions on the data side of things. Do you know where they're living, or actually what was the click-through rate on that? Where were the drop-offs? Do you know that? Which pages were they actually living on? How long did they spend on those pages? If you don't know all of that, the data will be there for you. You just need to piece it together, or just use the tech to do it. But informing the EVPs and the management side of things, I also think the way pre-boarding is done, not just what you're doing for diversity, inclusion, your sustainability and all that, how you pre-board people, how you bring them in, how you manage kind of your talent on development programs, kind of your management programs, the opportunities you're giving people within a business. It is done and publicized well on early careers. It's really done well, but I don't think it's done on experienced hires too well as well. And that's something which can inform ads as well. So there's a management of loads of the whole talent piece in many different ways.
Yeah.
See it.
And on that experienced hire piece, I mean, are there any other kind of tips that you would give kind of companies when they're thinking about that?
Yeah, I started my career at McDonald's actually in the HR team there, and something I loved which they mapped out on a brochure back then, but it was quite a hefty brochure. They mapped out every kind of job category and the journey properly, like really properly, with awesome graphics, case studies and everything like that. And I love that. And it wasn't just how they're doing their job, it was actually what they're doing in the restaurants for the local community, so on and so forth. And I just thought that's super powerful. It's something that's been lost. I don't see it too often done, really, because I'm a firm believer that everyone is inherently selfish for themselves, and they've got to be, because you've got to love yourself first before you can help other people. So that means in the ads, you've got to show someone what's in it for them, why, so what type of thing. So you've got to get that right for them and then kind of build it with the rest of the pieces, the community, everything like that. And that might be the number one thing for them, but build it up.
That's interesting, because do you think perhaps that's possibly some of the times the mistake that companies make? And, that fair enough. They're advertising a job, right? There's opportunity, a career progression, but perhaps they're not linking that to some of the kind of social responsibility stuff that they do, and how that kind of person level, operational level kind of gets involved with that, how that's open to them. It might be listed in some benefits package, like, kind of social responsibility day, or 2 days per year, but it's not visualized. So therefore it's often difficult for somebody to kind of visualize themselves in that role with that opportunity. So I think you make a super point there. Super point indeed. Wow. I'm just conscious of time, right? We got like about 3 minutes before we're kind of wrapping up. So I wanted to hand the kind of floor over to you, completely open, Rohan, in terms of, was there anything that any advice, anything you wanted to kind of touch upon before we kind of round out this super cool chat? And equally at the tail end of that, you need to tell people where they can connect with you, right? Because I know there's going to be loads of people want to follow up conversation, that's for sure. But to the question, any advice that you want to kind of share before we close out that we've maybe touched upon, or anything you want to kind of reaffirm and just sort of say, look, if you're thinking about if these are your 3 takeaways, remember I said this.
Yeah, I think it would be use social. Huge opportunity there. Like really use it, map out kind of the journeys, who you're targeting. Data is the other one. So social, data, really look at that. I know it can be laborious. It will be worth it. And if it is laborious to you, work with someone else on it, or work with a team on it, because everyone will be bought into the fact that data is big. We all know that. So why are you hiding from having a meeting about it and looking at it? So that'd be the other one. I'm not going to do 3. I'm going to be odd. Do 2. And then find me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. You'll see me posting here and there. But I literally love to learn to network. Glenn knows that. So
man.
Get in contact.
100%. And they should definitely follow you on LinkedIn as well, man. I mean, you're doing some super, super cool posts at the moment, really personal stuff that, really kind of, it's certainly not, kind of Adway specific content. I mean, it's related to some of the stats, but it's you've integrated your own personal story into it, which really is powerful for me, just in terms of some of the things you've experienced through your career and the way you think about, kind of that whole kind of TA, HR kind of recruitment ecosystem. So I'd definitely encourage people to connect with you and just, kind of drop in on your content, because it's super cool, super cool. Thank you, Louise. She's already dropped your LinkedIn profile into the chat channel, so that saves me having to do it. So that's great. But listen, all that's left is for me to thank you, Rohan, for being my superstar guest today, man. Seriously, always a pleasure catching up with you. And as I said, everybody, you know, I think this has completely proved it. Probably the nicest guy in the HR, TA kind of recruitment ecosystem. So if you've got time and intention, you should definitely connect with him. It'll be well worth it and a great conversation. And then I think next week, I need to check the schedule. But next week, GPS, Graham, is talking to Sarah Fitzmaurice and Peter, Dr. Peter, who was one of the commenters on today's chat channel. So that will be next week. Well worth tuning in, 1 p.m. BST. But for now, everybody, have a fab rest of your day. Rohan, super cool to chat.
Likewise.
Take care to everybody. See you soon.
Take care, everyone.